over at Raw Story, by the way, there's an article, just wanted to flag for you, from tweeting to tooting, the switch from Twitter to Mastodon. And it's a great summary of what Mastodon is. Mastodon is sort of like Twitter, only it's not run by one guy, it's not one company. It's open source software that anybody in the world can see and use. In fact, Donald Trump's Truth Social is based on Mastodon's open source software. He just took it and attached it to his own server. So the Mastodon software is open source, and you can download it from the App Store and things like that. And then you pick a server to operate off of, and that server can be its own little closed universe, like Truth Social is, Donald Trump's server, or it can be wide open, like most of the other Mastodon servers are, where everybody in the world can see what's going on it. And, I created an account. It's Thom Hartmann, all run together, at whatever it is, Mastodon. I'm forgetting which server I'm on right now. I created the account last week. There's a whole bunch of different servers. But it doesn't much matter. I mean, you can see the local view of the server, or you can see the view of all the various different servers. And so I just wanted to flag that for you. In fact, I think I've got to put my Mastodon account here on on one of my pinned tabs in the studio so that I can give you that information in detail, because I should have known right off the top of my head. My apologies. Anyhow, I think it's fascinating, and a lot of people are moving over there, and it's worth checking out. But that's not what I wanted to talk about with you today, although it does have something to do with social media. And that is this piece that John Halpin wrote over at the liberalpatriot.substack.com, his Substack newsletter, titled "In Defense of Being Alone." And what he pointed out is that looking at Americans 15 and older, the number of hours per week that people spend alone, way back in 2013, was, about an hour a week. I mean, people spent very little time, frankly, every week all alone. And it went up to, by 2017, 2018, it had gone up to around 4 hours a week of alone time. And then, of course, the pandemic really jacked it up to a little over 8 hours a week of alone time. But that trend seems to be holding. It held into 2021, around 9 hours a week of alone time. And he makes the point that, when mass shootings occur or people behave in just weird manners, very often we call them loners, or social people who experience social isolation. And the profiles of a lot of mass killers and extreme weirdos, he notes, fit into that category. But on the other hand, he says, according to new census data on time use examined by Bruce Ward of the Washington Post, Americans across demographic lines are spending more and more time alone. However, what if the increase in choosing to be alone isn't necessarily a sign that the world is falling apart? Maybe it's not even a sign that there's massively increased use of social media that causes people to just stay alone and stare at their screen all the time. What if it's a sign, he asks, what if it's rather a sign of a rational action in defense of individuality and personal freedom in a world of increasingly oppressive social groups? And he talks about how from 2014 to 2021, you saw this dramatic rise in social media use, but also this steady stream of disruptive political events. And persuasion, he says, was superseded by rhetorical pounding. And so a lot of people just said, this Trump craziness, or this, the so-called cancel culture, whatever you want to, all across the political spectrum, all across the social spectrum, people just were like, I'm not ready for that. I'm going to check out. I can tell you from my own personal experience, in my own personal life, and I say this with Louise's permission. In fact, we discussed it this morning when we were putting the show together. I have never in my life really wanted to be alone. I mean, I can do it. I don't I don't find myself uncomfortable when I'm alone, although I tend to occupy my mind. I usually read when I'm alone. But, you know, it doesn't bother me, but I don't crave it. But my wife has, since she was a kid, has craved alone time. And, you know, I don't know if this is something genetic or if it has to do with, you know, her childhood or what. It doesn't really matter. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's, you know, some people are just, you know, they like alone time. She was telling me this morning how after 15 years or thereabouts, you know, into our marriage, well, this is maybe more like 15 or 17 or 18 or 20 years into our marriage, there was a 3-week period that she remembers really vividly when I was like off in Uganda doing, you know, international relief work, and our oldest had gone to college. Our second child was in Germany. No, our second child was in France, and our youngest was in Finland. In both cases, staying with friends. In fact, our middle child was staying with Jay and Jack Riley. Jay, the musician who wrote and performs the music that's the intro to this show. They lived in Paris. And our youngest was staying with one of her classmates whose parents were in Finland. She was an exchange student. And so Louise had, and I was gone. She had 3 whole weeks where she was literally all alone in the house, and it was when she wasn't running a business, because she and I had been taking turns running our businesses for years and years and years. And how she just savored that. And, you know, even now, you know, I come home from doing this show, and I go up to my office, and I spend from 1 o'clock in the afternoon to 5 o'clock in the afternoon every day writing the next day's op-ed for the Hartmann Report, and intentionally leaving Louise alone, because she just likes that quiet time, that alone time. She's a very, you know, a person who likes that. I don't know if you want to call that introversion or what you call it, but, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. But, you know, he's speculating in this article, you know, perhaps a rising number of Americans experienced this social group tyranny over the past decade and decided, I'm out. Why go through the pain and anxiety of capitulating to dogmatic people who dominate group environments when you could be on your own, doing what you want, thinking about politics and the world in your own way, or just doing nothing and taking the dog for a walk or reading a book or listening to music? Life is too short to put up with annoying behavior from other people. And he ends, you know, introverts of the world unite, but not for too long or with too many people. I love it. But I think that there's a lot to be said for, you know, respecting this spectrum of introversion and extroversion. These are words that were invented by Carl Jung back in the last decades of the 19th or early decades of the 20th century. And his idea was that fundamentally or originally, I mean, the words introversion, extroversion, or introvert and extrovert have gone through many permutations over the decades. But, you know, originally basically that extroverts were people who defined themselves by how other people react to them. And so they constantly need to be interacting with other people to really know who they are. And that introverts were people who defined themselves by some inner definition that they were quite confident of, and they didn't need the validation or external validation or representation of who they are. Now, you know, this was Carl Jung's original idea. As I said, you know, since then the words have been changed and the meanings have been changed and fine-tuned and tweaked and whatnot. But just, you know, I think that COVID and Donald Trump, and I'd love to hear your take and thoughts on this, that the Trump presidency, the insane damage that did to the United States and continues to do to the United States, but the wounding that we experienced, the psychic, the psychological, the spiritual wounding that this country experienced from the Donald Trump presidency and the insane asses that he brought along with him, these just wackadoodles who are on TV every day just spouting the most insane nonsense, and of course the toxic nonsense, you know, the racist, the homophobia, the hatred, the anti-Semitism. We had that, and then the fourth year of that, we had the worst pandemic in 100 years, and Trump's bungling of it led to 1 million dead Americans. Over at Daily Kos, they had a questionnaire yesterday, I believe it was, maybe the day before, asking, you know, what's your take on COVID? Are you to the point where, you know, okay, I've had it, I'm over it, I'm back to normal? Or have you avoided it? And you're, damn it, I'm not going to get it? Or are you somewhere in between? You know, where are you on this? And, you know, I answered that, you know, I haven't gotten it, Louise hasn't gotten it, and damn it, we're not going to get it. We still wear masks everywhere we go. You know, Sean was telling me about a friend of hers, may I say this? You know, who now has had COVID for the 4th time. It's a vaccinated person. But, you know, each time you get it, it increases the risk that you're going to get long COVID or that you're going to get a stroke or a heart attack or some terrible consequence from it. And her friend, having it now the 4th time, is having it the worst time. I don't want to go through that. That seems crazy to me. So we've got these external forces, right? The insanity of Trump, the danger of a deadly disease, literally a deadly disease. I mean, it's killed 1 million of our fellow Americans. It's killed, you know, probably 10 or 20 million of our fellow humans around the planet, probably more than that, actually. Is that driving a new norm for behavior? Or is that allowing people to step back a little bit from the frenetic electronic pace of, you know, watching our televisions and listening to radio and going to work and you know, work from home for a while or take some time off from work or just kind of recenter or reevaluate, you know, what does life mean? Why am I here? What should I be doing? What's it all about? And come to new conclusions. I mean, there are all these fascinating articles that have been written, you know, many of them in like business journals, like the Financial Times is all over this. At least once a week, there's some new article about the new work environment or how young people in America, in particular millennials, have a different understanding of their relationship to work. Is that the result of just this experiment with COVID or this experience of COVID? Or is that the result of the 80-year cycle swinging around? That this new generation is like the generation that came up that, you know, during FDR's presidency? I don't know. I don't have any easy answers for this stuff, but I find it just fascinating to look at.